Yeah. No, you're good.
All right.
You're good.
All right, cool. All right. Hello, John.
What's up, Rex?
How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to be on here with you and have a conversation.
Welcome. All right. Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited about this too. I mean, I don't ever get a chance to talk to like religious people outside of their environment very often. So this is a new experience for me too. Yeah.
We're just at a conference table overlooking Sparkman Wharf. We're in a good location.
Dude, I
just
love
to have a cool conversation.
I love that view.
Yeah.
All right. So a little bit background about you is so you're building a church.
Yeah.
From scratch.
Yeah.
And when I say building, I'm not talking about just like the actual building. I mean like you're starting the organization from scratch.
Right.
You're the founder, right?
Yeah. And in church world, they have a funny word for it. They actually call it church planting rather than church starting or church building, just because it's almost like the church is this community. It's like a living organism. And so starting a church is not just, it's more than the building. Obviously you have to meet in a building, but it's definitely like planting in the sense of, it's funny when I got into the church planting world, my wife got into the planting world, and she's been involved in plants, and it's similar because you sow a seed and you wait and you hope that something comes out of it, and that's kind of what we're doing with the church right now. So
that's really cool. Like botany world. Like what is she like? Just growing like flowers and plants and.
Yeah, it's really been, I should let you talk to her sometime. It's been a struggle because we've had several plants die. We had a fiddle leaf fig tree, which is hard to keep alive, and she really hasn't been growing from scratch, but kind of getting plants and then taking care of them, and we've had our trial and error a little bit, but we just have a few in our apartment. We don't get a lot of light in our apartment, so it is what it is, but she loves it.
Any parallels between that and your church plant?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like, if you sowed a seed initially and, depending on the type of seed, it could take a year or even 2 years, or it could take 10 years for it to become a fully developed or somewhat developed plant. And that's kind of how the church has been going. Like I've only known you maybe a couple months now, but I've been thinking through and trying to think through, okay, how do we start a new church? And this church planting, it's like, I feel like I've been in it for a while. Haven't seen a lot, of like fruition yet, but, we're hoping that comes in the days ahead. So I think there's a lot of parallels to it. Yeah, you could probably go really far with the metaphor, I'm sure.
Definitely. So, I mean, I guess the obvious question here is, why? Like, what makes you want to start a church? Like, is this something you've thought about for a long time, or?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, obviously, in starting a church, and being the leader of that, hopefully it means something to me personally. Like I have a conviction about, not only religion and faith, but also, it's a Christian church, like the Christian movement. And that goes back to my teenage years when I became a Christian. And, over the past 15, 17 years, I guess, since then, as I've grown in that kind of walk and got this sense of calling, like what am I supposed to do with my life, and calling to even, I would say, like pastoral ministry. And then, starting churches has really been from day one, at least like of the Christian movement. And I know that it isn't, other organizations, other religions start like new movements all over the world, but from day one of the Christian movement especially as well, it kind of started out as one organization or one organism, if you will. They started another one, and now you have thousands of different churches. Unfortunately, you have thousands of different even Christian denominations across the world, and it all kind of traces back to that one that kind of sent out another one. And that's our story. We were part of a great church in Clearwater that sent us over here to start this new work. So yeah, it's a long time coming. Yeah, personally and even vocationally for me as I've been working in this field. So
your background is in religious studies and growth, and so this is something that you've been a part of for a while, or?
Yeah, I mean my college education is in actually organizational communication, just because like I grew up and my dad is a pastor as well. He leads a church, and I grew up and got to see how much, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, that the church like sometimes has to operate like an organization, like a business. It should be different in the way that it treats its employees and stuff like that. But still, there's a lot of organizational leadership in a church, and that's why I went and studied that. But then I did get a graduate degree in theology, and the Bible and all of that, and so have a good bit of educational background in there as well, as well as just experience growing up in that kind of environment.
So let me get this straight. Your dad was a pastor, but you didn't become a Christian until your teenage years.
Yeah, and it kind of the story actually goes really hand in hand together, because my dad didn't become a pastor until I was 13.
Oh.
So he always worked in business. He sold ad space for Verizon Yellow Pages. You remember when it was like the Yellow Pages?
Those books.
He used to go around to businesses and sell the ads, and he made a lot of money doing that, but always had this calling towards being a pastor, and he always wanted to do that. And so he got offered a job. He actually took a significant pay cut in order to do that, and moved our family. That's when we moved from New Jersey down to Florida. And it was actually a few months after he became a pastor at that church where I surrendered my life, I guess you would say, or became a Christian. I always grew up in the church, but it isn't like you're just born, at least my view, you're not just born a certain religion or born a Christian or something like that. I think that everybody should have a choice, and it should be a personal decision, and I just made that decision when I was 13 or so.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. It starts out with when I moved from New Jersey to Florida, and my dad was this pastor of a smaller church that I was a part of. I just gained some really great relationships that people who had really good influence on me, and ultimately told me a lot about the Christian faith and helped me to understand that. The biggest thing for me, and the biggest part of my story is that, when I was 13 and kind of in this season, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Oh.
And I was living in Fort Myers. That's where I lived and went to high school. And they actually transferred me up here to Tampa General Hospital, and I got checked into the hospital and had two. It's a really long story. It depends how much you want to go into it, but it was 2 months.
As much as you're comfortable with. Go as deep as you want. This is your boat right now.
Yeah. Well, I can go really deep. Basically, I was in the hospital for 2 months, and that was a time that rocked my faith, or what I thought that my faith was, because this is the way, and this is what I always thought about Christianity and about God in general. I don't think it even applies just to Christians, but it's like if I follow, I always had this understanding of like, if I follow God and I do what's right, God's gonna bless me and things are gonna go well. Bless is just that word for like, things are gonna be well for me. And I started like following after God and becoming more religious when I was 13. And then I was diagnosed with this brain tumor, and I was like, God, what happened?
Like, why?
It's like,
why would you do this to me?
Yeah, why would you do this to me? Like I'm trying my best to be a follower of Christ and be a Christian now, and now I have a brain tumor in my head. And for my religious upbringing, that did not go hand in hand. This is a really long story, but there's a sect of even Christianity that teaches that if you trust God and you have a lot of faith that He's going to heal you or make you better or something like that, you just have a lot of faith and then it'll work out for you. And that was not the case for me. Like I don't know if you've ever heard of these like Christian healing crusades.
Yes, I have.
All right. Well, I don't know you that well, and so I'm trying to figure out where you're at on that. But I was in the hospital, and I got checked out and went to a Christian healing crusade, and I went to, I had people come and pray over me, and they were like, all right, you're going to be healed, this like faith healing, and it did not work out like that. I mean, it was 2 months where I never got healed in the way that I thought that I was going to get healed, and had some great brain surgeons and had some great doctors, and eventually they removed this mass, and it was not cancerous, thank God, and it was completely successfully removed. But in that season, I just learned, man, sometimes life is not easy. Sometimes life is really hard, and sometimes things don't go well for you. And that's why I think that man, faith is so important, because man, we're all gonna pass on, whether we're 13 like I was in that hospital. I mean, there was a thought like, I might not get out of here, and is there more to this? Is there more to life? Is there something else out there? And whether you're 13, when you take your final breath, or 33, like I'll be next year, or 83, I think that there's something else and something beyond that, and that's why I think that that experience really drove me to landing on what I believe convictionally about faith and about God and about creation and all of that. So yeah, double click on any of that. Ask me any other questions. Nothing off limits on that, all right?
Damn, crazy story. There's not a lot of 13-year-olds or even like 30-year-olds who can say that they've confronted death like that.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, so you're 13. You found out you had a tumor, and your faith got rocked, and then the operations went well. Did you immediately fall back into your faith, or was there like a process of like you were still testing things out before you got back into the faith?
Yeah, I would say that it was pretty immediate. It actually, that experience really, and I think that an experience like that will drive you one of two ways. Relating to God in general. It will either push you towards rebellion towards God, and like man, there is no God. How could he let this happen to me? Or how can he let this happen to someone I love? And some people may push away from God in a season like that. For me, it was the opposite, where that situation, really kind of forced me to rely on God, and ultimately, broke any barriers that I had to trust in God, and it was kind of immediate. Even through that situation, I was pushed closer to Him. I felt, in that season. Okay. So, yeah. Someone tells a story or has a quote about kind of gold and putting gold in the fire like makes it soft and malleable if you're. Molding gold, and there's a quote that says like the same sun or the same fire that melts gold hardens clay, and it's like sometimes suffering and difficulty in this life, and this isn't just relating to God, but it can either make you harder towards God and harder towards the world, or it can soften you towards God and soften you towards others. And that's definitely what it did for me, and I think. Man, I wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for that experience. I would not be the same person at all. It marked me in a big way.
Oh no, you had your life changed.
Yeah,
that's a life-changing experience. Finding out that, that you have a growth in your brain of all places. I mean, a growth anywhere is gonna suck.
Yeah. Your brain definitely sucks for sure.
Yeah. Were your parents' faith rocked as well? That time?
Yeah, I think so. I think. And they probably hid more stuff than me. I was 13. They probably didn't want me to see them cry, or didn't want me to see them, being rocked in their faith. But I can only imagine. I'm in a situation like that, unless you're lying.
You're
going to say, oh yeah, we just made it through even keel. I mean, that's a difficult situation. Like I said, it'll force you to either move away from God, like I said, or move closer to Him. And for me, that was the case. So
for sure. I mean, like the worst phrase you can ever hear in the world is that your kid has cancer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can only imagine, and I hope I never encounter that. You never encounter that, or anybody else. It's it's unfortunate, man.
All right. Any other times your faith was tested, or was that like the ultimate test?
Yeah, that was definitely the ultimate test. I think, like any other, Western kid, maybe American kid or whatever, I think that I've had, periods in my life. I think it's just good to be honest about periods in my life where I've kind of doubted. Mm-hmm. I think doubt about faith, and even expressing, and me being a pastor, it's like, you shouldn't have any doubts. You should never deal with any doubts. I think if we're to be honest, I think, especially like the way that our world and our global world, and you get to experience. I've gone to places like Asia and Africa and South America, and seen people of other faiths, and I think that honestly, I've questioned my faith at times and had doubts about, is what I believe about about Christianity, about God, about Jesus Christ. Is that true, or is what they say and what they believe true? I think that I've had bouts with that in college, never to the point of giving up my faith, but that's something that, I think we need to talk about, more often too. Is, like I said, I think at the end of the day, nobody should have faith or Christianity or Jesus forced down their throat. Mm-hmm. I think that it should be, hey, here's what we believe. Even it's interesting dealing with my nephews. I have nephews now. I don't have kids of my own, but I have nephews, and it's like I want to tell them what I believe and help them understand, what I believe and why I believe it about Jesus and about the Bible and about God. But ultimately, I want them to make their own decision. I want them to, come to a faith decision on their own. And I think that we should allow everyone to have that experience. And I think that if we're honest, everybody has questions and everybody has doubts at times, and I've gone through seasons of that, but like I said, never to the point of giving up my faith, but definitely experienced that. Mm-hmm. So
that's interesting, because I've definitely gone on my own a myself, because I grew up going to church, going to a Christian, in a somewhat Christian household, right. My mother was she went to a Christian college. My dad, he was more of a philosopher type guy who just always just told me to question everything. So so even though I grew up in a Christian household, ish, I definitely always questioned it, to the point where actually today, so I don't really subscribe to a religion. Although if I did, it would definitely be Buddhism, just because it aligns closely with my beliefs. But I would be lying if I didn't say that a lot of my personal beliefs in life have a lot to do with things I learned in church. It's just about how to treat people. And just take care
morals
of people.
And values and stuff like that.
And I think that's definitely the where the goal is at, as far as organized religion. It's just giving people a system so that they can function in real life with a strong community that shares those same values.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, one of the things, even in in America, we'll say, I don't know if you've ever heard of the word post-Christian, or a
postmodern Christianity.
And people, I'll often hear people refer to America as post-Christian, and I think that what they're talking about a lot of times, I'm not that smart, and I don't fully understand even what the philosophers and people, you got to help me understand that, maybe Rex. But the post-Christian, a lot of people point to how in America we still have a lot of values and systems and morals and things like that ultimately were built on, America, I don't think was ever founded as a Christian nation. It was founded as a free nation, freedom to worship. But still, there were a lot of even Judeo-Christian or the Abrahamic religions underpinning a lot of our morals and values and things like that in our nation. And I think that a lot of people subscribe to those still, maybe without the Christian underpinnings, if you will. And so there's a lot of that, and I'm all for being more moral and self-improvement and all of that. I think that the danger sometimes is people confusing Christianity with moralism. It isn't just about being a more moral person. It's about something else entirely too.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah,
I've never heard that statement before.
Yeah, this is really out. I love talking about this, because I think that for a long time, because we do have the Christian teaching is a very ethical teaching, and there's ways to live and ways not to live, that a lot of people have confused Christianity with just kind of living a certain lifestyle and kind of abiding by these rules and not doing these things or following these 10 commandments or something like that. I remember one time I was a youth pastor at a church in North Tampa. And I remember getting lunch with a high school senior, and I just asked him that day, and this kid grew up in church and kind of grew up in Christianity, and I said, hey, if I was to ask you, what is Christianity all about, what would you say? And he responded to me, and he was like, well, it's about if I read the Bible and do everything that the Bible tells me to do, then life will be okay and things will go. It was basically if I live as a more moral person, that's what Christianity is about. But at the end of the day, I mean, I would humbly suggest Christianity is really, it's not the opposite, but it's essentially saying like you can't be moral enough. You can't be good enough. Like ultimately, all of our morals and values will fall way short of God's standard. And Christianity really I think, like even more so, is about the story of Jesus Christ and his sacrifice and what he did, because we can never make our way back to God by following these certain like rules and commands and stuff like that. We needed someone to kind of make up the gap between us and God, and that's what the sacrifice of Christ did for us, and reconciling us with God and making us righteous with God. And there's probably a lot of like religious language I have in there, but it's about something more than just being more moral, I think. Yeah, the Christian faith. So
someone can be moral without being a Christian then?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of people that are more moral and not Christians than a lot of Christians that I know. It's like I know a lot of, and I have a lot of friends who are honestly, not Christians, but they're way better behaved, way more moral people than some Christians that I know. And that's kind of, it's hard for some people to reconcile. I think morality and kind of values almost has more to do with your upbringing and kind of your family structure and kind of your lot in life sometimes. Christianity, like ultimately we want to challenge people to live and hold people accountable to a certain value system, but ultimately it's about, hey, like you'll never be able to check off the boxes like to earn a right relationship with God. But the good news, that's the bad news. Like the bad news is basically you suck and you'll never be good enough if you want to have a really negative view of it. Like the good news is, hey, and that's why Jesus came, in order to reconcile you with God and to live like righteous is the word the Bible uses, like live a life that you can never live, and ultimately give you his righteousness and give you a right relationship with God. So I definitely know, I can think of several people who are way more moral than even I am, I would say. So
I guess two-part question, double question then. I'll let you choose which order you want to answer this in. Like, first, the obvious question following that statement is going to be, A, what makes someone a Christian? And B, what makes someone moral?
Yeah.
If the two aren't congruent.
Yeah. The first one I think I can probably take a stab at a little bit easier. I think the second one, what makes someone moral, is a little difficult. But what makes someone a Christian, I think, and I would ascribe to, and obviously not everybody ascribes to like authority in the Bible and authority in Scripture, but the New Testament of the Bible is pretty clear that if you confess with your mouth, you believe in your heart that what Jesus has done, that he did it like for you in your place, and that his sacrifice, like sin is a really big word, but that's the Bible word. Honestly, I don't have another word for it. Like his sacrifice like cancels the debt of your sin. Like when you believe in that and you trust in that, like that's how you become a Christian. Even if there's a story in the Bible, it's honestly one of the most troubling stories for people, but it's one of the most fascinating stories, I think, because it's the story of the other thief on the cross. So Jesus is in the middle cross, and there's another thief, or someone who rightly deserved to be there. I would venture to say Jesus did not like deserve to be there, but the other criminal rightly deserved to be there. And he turned to Jesus, and really in humility, he was like, he said, we deserve to be here. You don't deserve to be here. Or like he acknowledged that he has fallen way short, and he looked to Jesus and he said, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And so in that moment, he was almost acknowledging, like, I've fallen way short. He was trusting that Jesus was who he said he was, and like what he was doing. Maybe he didn't have all the like information we have, but he understood there's something to this guy. He put his trust in him, and Jesus said, today you'll be with me in paradise, is the way the Bible talks about it. Now that guy never had the chance to be a more moral person, never had the chance to make up for all of his wrong deeds or to undo. I don't know what he did. It says he's a thief on the cross. Maybe he stole or something, but he never got a chance to undo what he did. But yet he was, I would interpret it, he was forgiven. Why? Not because of anything he did, but because of someone that he trusted in. And that's, I think, ultimately how, the difference between a Christian and a non-Christian would be someone who ultimately trusts in Jesus and Jesus' sacrifice for them and for their sake. So that one, might be an easier question than the second one. How do you become a more moral person? Were you going to ask something else on that?
No, keep going. This is awesome.
Yeah, I think morality, like I said, I think, your upbringing gets instilled. It's like the nature versus nurture debate. I mean, for example, I've known, and I am, lucky enough, blessed enough to have two parents that are still married together, have a brother and sister, have a great family relationship. But man, I know, some people who were abandoned as a kid, who were, rejected by different foster families, who ended up having to kind of even steal or something like that in order to their morals were not instilled by them by this family structure and parents or something like that, where for me that was the case. And for them, they didn't have the same upbringing as me. I would say upbringing has a lot to do with it. I do think though, I don't want to say, it isn't about, well, just trust in Jesus and then live however you want and kind of, let the purge happen and do whatever you want to do, right? No, I think that ultimately, if you really do trust in what Jesus has done, the Bible, Christianity, really says that, you will be transformed, you'll be made new, and hopefully that evidences itself in you kind of living, yes, a more moral life. And maybe that looks like, for me, I kind of started, if you were from here to here, I kind of started really towards the front of the pack. I had a great upbringing, I had everything like that. For someone else who maybe, didn't have the same upbringing as me, man, they were dealt like a pretty bad hand in life. Mm-hmm. And maybe moral improvement for them gets them to kind of a 5 out of 10, where for me it's like, man, I'm responsible because of the upbringing that I've had. That's what I would say. I think ultimately, yeah, you should improve as a Christian. I mean, for people in my church, I'm asking them, how are you living? How are you loving people? How are you serving your neighbors? How are you serving the poor? Ultimately, I think that there is a lot of ethical standards, I guess you would say, but ultimately, you'll never be able to earn, the title of Christian. Does that make sense at all?
It's very fascinating because I think to piggyback off of the first story, I think the part that most people that aren't Christians who are critical of not just Christianity but organized religion in general, especially the Abrahamic ones, is that specific story, is that you're telling me that I could live a life of debauchery, do all kinds of messed up things, steal, drugs, lie, cheat, murder, but on the very last day, if I give my life over to Jesus, I'll be saved. And there's a lot of people who have and I think rightfully so, that they take a lot of issue with that as well. Because they view that as not a moral life until the very last second, versus hey, I lived a very good life, that paid my taxes and never stole, and you're gonna tell me just because even though I've been a good person but I didn't give my life to Jesus, that I'm going to the fiery pits of hell? And a lot of people have a lot of confusion with that part.
Well, I think one reason especially is because it hits head on with our culture, with our society, which is largely based on kind of what have you done for me lately. It's largely based on, show me your education and show me your skills and show me your resume and kind of this sense of earning and climbing up the corporate ladder and kind of paying your dues is built into our culture and our wiring. And this flips it upside down where it says, here, I will give you, really, the term Christianity uses oftentimes is grace. It's, I will give you what you don't deserve. That's what grace is all about, which for us, for me even, I mean, like I'm a very competitive person. I mean, I tried to get straight A's in school. Like it hits us on the head because it's like, no. Like I want what I deserve. Like I want to earn things. I want to be achieving things. And that's just our cultural wiring. I think that's just how we're built as human beings. And often a lot of people refer to it the upside down nature of the gospel of Jesus Christ, which it flips our human systems completely upside down, which I think that it is, rightfully so. I mean, I would agree with you, man. Like Hitler. Let's say Hitler on the last day of his life, let's just say hypothetically, encountered a Christian who told him about Jesus, and this is probably like too hypothetical. This is even hard for me to talk about. But that's the example a lot of people use, is someone who has committed atrocities like that. You're saying they can turn their life around and be saved even without undoing everything that they did. And man, ultimately, I think looking at that story, like the thief of the cross, ultimately I would say yes. While at the same time, I don't think that it's an excuse to go, well, I'm going to live however I want right now, and then in 30 years or 50 years on my deathbed, that's when I'll surrender to God. Mm-hmm. It's like, I think that seems very artificial. There have been people throughout church history who have done stuff like that, who have waited to be baptized until they're on their deathbed, because it's like, I want to wait and make sure that I kind of make up for all the wrongs that I did. I think that there's something, that just says, this is weird motivations for you. Like ultimately, yes, if you become a Christian, like it should, I believe it should change your heart and change your lifestyle, where you want to then be more moral and serve people and serve the less fortunate. But I completely get you. I completely hear you out on that. I think that it's a challenge, especially to our Western minds and our system. So, yeah, challenge me on that, man. I love it.
I mean, the part that I think about, like that story, because I've actually thought about that exact story before, because it's not the first time I've heard it. And you can add to this, tell me I'm wrong, or let's see. But I think the difference is the people who make the choice, because I think that it all comes down to choice in your decision, because your choices and your decisions are a reflection of your values and principles. And the people who make the choice to, hey, I'm going to purposely lead a life of debauchery, and then convert at the last day, versus the type of people who have led a life of debauchery, but then at the end they realize, yo man, I did some messed up things, and I don't know if I can be forgiven, but I want to be. I think at that point they both led the same life, but it's their values and principles are completely different. And I think if I were to pedal, well, not pedal, I don't want to say pedal, that sounds negative. If I were to push that story, I think that would be the perspective that I would take, because at the end of the day, we're not, because when you look at people, it's like the result of what they do in life, everything we do that we can see physically with our eyes is a reflection of their value system. And you can't really see someone's value system, you could just see their end results. Versus when you how do you see someone's value system? How do you see the principles? Like you really can't. It's like the foundation of a house.
Yeah, I think too. I think even you can almost, obviously you have a lot, maybe hundreds of different values and character traits or something like that. You could even, in those two people you were just talking about, I think you can boil it down to humility and dependence on something else and something greater maybe, or other people, or so humility on one side, and then you have really pride on the other one, is like self-dependence, like I'm going to live for myself. That's pride, which even we would say, Christian teaching would be really, pride is the root of all sin or all wrongdoing. It all stems back to pride. It's like looking inward, and I'm going to live just for me and not for anybody else around me, or not for any higher being if there is one. It all I would point to is a result of pride, where on the other side, I would say humility is the root of all virtue. Like humility is saying, I am not, a self-dependent person. Like, I need other people in my life, other human beings. I want to live, not for the benefit just of myself, but the benefit of other people. And ultimately, I'm going to look up and say, man, is there something bigger out there that I can look to and I can depend on? And I think if I were to boil it down on those two people, I would say it's one, someone who's humble, and then someone who's prideful. And which one are we? It's like you don't pick. I'm a humble person. I think that's maybe a little prideful to say that, but maybe that's a little too simplistic.
I'm humbler than you. Okay.
Yeah, you are. I would agree with that. I would totally agree.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's definitely fascinating. So so to shift the conversation a little bit to like Christianity in like the 21st century, some would say it's thriving, some would say it's dying. Like you can read all kinds of different articles on the new generations as they come up become less and less, not just Christian, just less and less organized religion.
Like organized religion, church membership, all of that. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't bode well for my job employment in the future, does it? There's been several reports this year. Actually, one report came out by this organization named Gallup, which says, like, for the first time, have you seen this report?
I have not, but I'm familiar with Gallup polls.
Yeah. Well, this report, it says, for the first time since they've been tracking it, church membership in America has dipped below the 50 percentile range. And so when they first started tracking it, I think it was in the 30s or so, they said, okay, how many Americans are part of not only a Christian church, but a synagogue or a mosque or something like that? How many are affiliated with organized religion? It was somewhere around 70%, really in the 30s through like the 2000s. It was hovering around 70%, so like 3 out of 4, maybe 2 out of 3. Well, in the 2000s, it started taking a sharp dip. It was in the 50%, and then this year, for the first time, 47%. So under half of people would say that I am a member, not even a weekly congregant, but maybe I'm a member. I go once a month or something to a church or a mosque or a synagogue. And like I said, doesn't bode very well for my job security, just because, and even a lot of, if you break that report, and they do break the report down by generations. So Gen X and boomers are bringing the number up. It's Gen Z and millennials, people our age and younger, who are way lower than even 47% attending a church or synagogue or mosque or something like that. And so that is, in one sense, I think it is legitimately, just the state of our world, the state of our especially nation. I mean, that was tracking America. If you zoom out, reports tell us even worldwide, like a lot of people would claim, and maybe we're biased, a lot of Christians would claim Christianity is growing more than it ever has before in places like, certain parts of Asia, in sub-Saharan Africa, in South America. Christianity is booming in those regions where maybe it was not before. They actually, there's an interesting study. It was like maybe 40 years ago, your average Christian, was a white 40-year-old like Western male. Well, today I think like the average Christian is like a young like African woman.
Oh wow!
It's like the center of global Christianity has shifted really from the West, to the South more and more. And in America, I mean, especially if we look, in our country, yes, I mean, honestly, Christianity and organized Christianity is definitely declining in the West and in our country, but worldwide, I think it is still growing. So there's glimmers of hope. I don't know. Like I said, maybe we're a little biased in that, but the truth is here, yes, I think one of the challenges, it's like I'm starting a church among a lot of, this context where I'm at is a lot of millennials and Gen Z and people who don't, want to be a part of any kind of organized religion. And the tough nut for me to crack is, okay, how do I make faith and the Christian faith relevant? That's the challenge, Rex. So
for the youth.
For the youth, yes, for sure, for the youth.
Gotcha. I guess before we get to that, because I definitely want to hear your answer to that.
Yeah.
I'd
love to hear your answers to that too. Or hypothetical answers, maybe. I don't know.
I'm focused on trying to find cool people to talk to for hours at a time. Actually, I guess that is kind of hand in hand.
Yeah.
But okay, so I've definitely read similar studies where it's not just Christianity that's growing in other parts of the developing countries. It's actually organized religion overall. Like Islam is actually, last I checked, which was like about halfway through last year, that Islam was the fastest growing religion in the entire world.
Yeah, I have heard that.
Yeah, like ahead of Christianity, and it is growing in like places like Africa and it's definitely spreading like wildfire in East Asia right now. So I definitely see that happening. But so I want to get your perspective of why that's happening, like why the decline in the West and why the increase in non-West. And when I say West, I mean like developed countries. So like Japan is technically a Western country, even though it's not on the Western Hemisphere.
Right.
So
right. And would you I don't know if you know, would the reports like include Japan, or you're saying it's countries unlike Japan, more developing countries?
So it's growing in developing countries.
Yeah. I've heard people talk about that and try to figure out, why is that? And I don't know. There's people way smarter on me than that. I would say, one, just our emphasis on just logic and reason and things like that. I think we're not as like God-minded, maybe I would say sometimes. People talk about how in the West, like we have this, it's a technical word, but like immanent frame. So like there's the immanent, which is kind of like here and now and close and kind of what's going on in our world and with other human beings. And then you have the transcendent, like what is out there. And it's almost like our culture with technology and things like that. It almost it forces us into this bubble, I think, sometimes of just thinking about like human civilizations. And sometimes it's hard for us to look beyond and go and think like a mystic sometimes. Like man, there might be more out there. Like I mean, I would say maybe some of that. I think just also like the busyness of our life. Someone has a quote. John Mark Comer is a Christian pastor in Portland, and he says that hurry is the enemy of spirituality in our day. Like hurry and busyness, and it's like man, we're so busy with things to do. It's like we don't have time to think about the bigger questions of life sometimes. Versus maybe someone who's in a developing country where maybe life isn't as hectic and they're not so distracted. Like I think that, technology, I love technology. I love social media. I mean, I think that there's a lot of pros to it. But ultimately, I think that sometimes it does distract us from the bigger questions of life. It doesn't allow us to kind of sit in our boredom, which sometimes is good, to sit back like your grandparents did, maybe in a rocking chair, looking out over a farm or something like that, and going, man, like, is there more to this? We never get the chance to ask that because we're so busy with, what's the text message and what's the Instagram updates and stuff like that. And I think that's so true. Like I said, hurry is the enemy of spirituality in our day. You can probably apply that to even more than just, Christianity, but I think that's definitely one of the ones that I have to fight sometimes in my own life. Man, how do I just pause, turn off my phone, get by myself and think like Godward thoughts for a moment. That's important to do sometimes.
No, that I actually agree with that 100%. As far as like hurry is the enemy of spirituality, because I don't know if you've ever studied like lean manufacturing before, but it's like in the startup world, it's just like a way of, it's a philosophy of how to develop quality products with good marketing material. And there's lean manufacturing was created by Toyota, but it was coined by this guy named Eric Ries. And in his book, he actually talks about the trap of staying busy is not the same as as developing as far as
like productivity.
yeah, because he talked about like his very first project that he ever did, because he was building a company, was that he spent a lot of time just writing code after code after code to build this product, but he never actually took the code and applied it to learn.
Wow.
And then from that he discovered that it's more important that throughout your day you spend 70% of your time learning, and 30% executing.
Yeah.
Because when you spend all your time executing, you're not learning. And if you're not learning, well, it doesn't matter what you build, whether it's a church or it's a piece of software product or it's a construction project. If you're not learning, you're going to develop a very bad product.
Wow.
So
that's interesting.
So he actually spends like most of his time actually just sitting back. He creates what's called the MVP, which is like the minimal viable product, and he takes it, he builds it, and then he tests it with the real world. And I think in our case as human beings, if we could translate that to our lives, it would be if we just sit back and meditate or pray or just like you said, just sit back and let your mind wander.
Yeah, that's important to do. I think just margin generally, man, margin's so important in everything in life. But that's fascinating. I'd love to look into that a little bit more and think through lean manufacturing for a church.
I think there's definitely things you could apply there, because lean manufacturing is just more of it's a scientific approach to just creating things, Because what a lot of people do is they do what's called waterfall, where they pour like untold amounts of time, energy, and resources into developing this crazy system. But then that system sucks.
Wow.
And they wasted, a year of their life, $100,000 of developing work and all of that, and they learned absolutely nothing. Whereas if you just look at your system that you're trying to build and you say, all right, what's the most basic system? For example, like in college, I started my own t-shirt company. So what I did back then, which wasn't lean, which was waterfall, is I spent like $500, got like 50 shirts, and I just put them on a table and I tried to sell them, right? Some sold better, some didn't sell better. So like looking back at it now, I would ask myself, what's the MVP of this? MVP would have been make 2 shirts of each design, sit them on a table, give them away for free. See which one disappears.
See which ones
disappears the fastest.
Are the hottest products.
And that would have given me more data coming in, and I would have saved myself $500. I would have saved myself 3 months of development time. And I could have took that money and energy redirected it into the shirt that disappeared the fastest. And probably would have like tripled my sales.
Wow, that's fascinating, man. That's brilliant.
And I think that falls hand in hand with what you said about like people are they're too busy being in a hurry, they're too busy checking Instagram, and they're not taking time to reflect and learn. Because we're all humans at the end of the day, and we as humans are the most important product on this earth. And I don't say that. I'm not trying to say that as like I guess it is kind of prideful. But it's more like we're the only beings on this planet that's conscious and capable of continuous learning, not instinctually but on purpose. So And if we don't keep doing that, it actually kind of frightens me now that I'm thinking about it.
It's like, what happens if I've been running so hard, so fast in the wrong direction? And then you realize, oh man, busyness is not success. And I think that's just a fascinating way to evaluate life in general. Is man, we need these checkpoints to just step back and go, like, is what I'm doing worth it in a sense? So
100% self-reflection definitely needed. So your earlier dilemma before. How are you reaching the youth, or do you have a plan for that?
How do I plan to do it? I think that ultimately, like, the question that I'm trying to answer, like for you, Rex, or anybody else, is why is being a part of a faith community, or specifically my question, why should I be a part of a Christian community or a church or something like that? And I think that like I said, that question's needed because there's a lot of people that are going, it was maybe for my parents or maybe my grandparents, but I don't see any relevance for faith, spirituality, church, in my life. I would point to a few things, and I think I've talked to you about these before. One, just the need for transcendence. Like I said, I think that something needs to wake us up to the reality, in my in my humble opinion, the reality that there's something more, that there's a creator out there, that there's a God out there. And just like, have you ever seen The Hunger Games?
Yes,
have you seen The Hunger Games?
I have.
Some of my favorite books and favorite movie as well. I forget if it's the second book or the second movie where basically how Katniss gets out is shooting the arrow at the cage that they're in or the dome that they're in, because there's something out there, and they realize, man, they're in this dome, they're locked in. Well, I feel like a lot of people in our day, like what I said about the imminent frame, like we're locked in this bubble of just busyness and technology and what's going on in our here and now in our world, that we don't stop to think, man, there might be something more, there might be something else out there. And I think that the church, like for me, like at least in my experience, like this weekly rhythm of being in a church community and singing songs with other believers and hearing people give messages about a created order, about God or about Jesus, like it points me on a weekly basis. It points me to the fact that there's something more and there's something else up there. And I think just that need for transcendence, like we talked about, other religions, have claims on transcendence as well. I would disagree in kind of what that transcendence is, and that's obviously where where we would maybe differentiate someone of a different religion or different belief system. But I think that just the need for transcendence, and I think that a church community gives you that sense of transcendence. We talked about community. I think I might have talked to you about that before. Just spiritual community. People who know you and know your struggles, but also can pray with you and be there for you and sharing the difficulties of life with you. I think that there's something to not only a community doing that, but a spiritual community that that it's like we can go and talk to God as a community on behalf of this person. Man, I've just found that that's terribly important in my part or in my life. Probably a couple other things I could point to. Were you gonna say something?
No, keep going.
No. So transcendence, just the need for transcendence, I would say, that's one reason I would say to a Gen Z millennial, hey, you need to be in a church community because we're going to point you towards transcendence. We're gonna be a spiritual community you can be a part of. I feel like I had a couple others. One big one, and I think that just looking around the world, man, like our desire for justice is something that's so good in our culture right now. And I know we don't do it perfectly, justice and there's a lot of injustice still in the world around. But even with like what's going on right now in Ukraine and the war and people crying out for justice and people crying out and wanting to serve the poor, to serve people that are suffering. Religion, and I would, maybe I'm a little bit, going like a little too far here. I would say that even Christianity has done so much to serve like the poor and the suffering, over the last 2,000 years. And ultimately, like the church that I want to help start, like I just want to serve people in this community, and I want to invite other people in and say, hey, be a part of our church because we're serving the community around us. We're going to help you understand how you can do justice in the world and how you can serve the poor and you can serve people in sex trafficking in this community and kind of invite people into justice initiatives and things like that too. So I think that just our motivation for justice and to serve the less fortunate is so good, and I want to help people find an avenue for that even through the church too. So I would point to those three, maybe transcendence, community, and justice as things that we can do better together than we can do apart on our own. So poke holes in that, Rex.
All right, okay. How about this? Can someone achieve those three things without becoming a Christian or going to a church?
Yeah. I mean, I would, make the case. My argument would be no. I mean, transcendence, the big one, and this is where I think like Christianity, from the beginning, it's an exclusive religion, and that's the way it challenges our culture a ton, because it says that I would claim just as Jesus claimed. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. like no one comes to the Father or no one comes to God, but through me. And so I think, on the transcendence piece, I would hold to that Jesus is the only way towards, in transcendence and relationship, like with a higher being. And that would be, I think, where maybe a lot of people, maybe even you, might disagree with me there. So yeah, that'd be one.
I think the main part where I would disagree with you is the definition of what God is. And I don't know if you're familiar with Friedrich Nietzsche and his works as a philosopher.
Yeah, a little bit. Not as much as you, I think, but I've heard of him. I'm sure I've heard several of his ideas. But
I mean, like, he has a very famous phrase, which is, God is dead. Like, that's kind of like what like skyrocketed him into like superstardom.
Yeah.
And the way he defines God is something that resonates very closely with how I look at life myself, which is that God is not necessarily an exterior being, in like the stratosphere, like controlling everything.
Yeah.
God is more so like the definition of what the ultimate human being looks like. Not as far as like physical looks, but as far as like the highest level of morality, perfectly efficient, completely compassionate, ultimate humility.
Yeah.
And it's not, and God isn't necessarily a being, but it's a state of being. So it's something that we're all working to be, as in, like, for example, like me, I'm trying to find new ways that I can provide value to, my friends, my community, my business, with everything around me. Like, how can I provide better podcasts for people? How can I, be a better human being? Like, if how can I help the poor people more? And that's what being God is. And being God is just being the best version of you that's possible. Which runs different to the Christian beings that I was taught growing up.
Yeah.
So that's I think that's where I would disagree with most Christians as to the definition of God.
Yeah. Would that be like like Nietzsche? Is that how to say it?
Nietzsche. There's like 1,000 ways to pronounce his name. I'm pretty sure they're all incorrect.
Yeah. Was he an atheist? Like, is that like an atheistic view of the world where there's not this creator or something like that? Is that?
I think he took a similar journey to me, which is he grew up in a Christian family.
Yeah.
And then he just asked more and more questions, and he just wrote more and more things down. And I'm not sure if he is an atheist. I think he was more of a like there were still parts of Christian ideology that he still followed. Like followed the 10 Commandments. But as far as like the definition of God, of humanity, and what we're all striving towards is, was one of his ultimate contributions to philosophy.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think, I would, disagree on the basis of like it is this, supernatural, created being out there who created the world, formed the world and stuff like that. And I guess that, my question there would be even just like a creation question. If God is a state of being, kind of, does that mean like all this kind of came from nothing, and how did this kind of come from nothing? Would be my question there. How did we get?
Oh, that's the ultimate question.
Yeah, that's the ultimate question, I guess.
We've been asking it for thousands of years.
Yeah, and so I think that what I would say, even with the whole moral argument, I think you can become like a better person without God, but ultimately I think even talking about like what's next after this life. Is there something after this life? And if there is, how do we get there? Not only how do we be this God like being in this life, but 80 years, 100 years, 50 years, whatever, it's going to end. And what's after there? And that's where I would say, God is after there, and kind of our decisions, if you will, in this life, determine how we experience that. I mean, that's a whole rabbit trail of Christian teaching as well. But what would Nietzsche say to like an afterlife? Would he not believe in an afterlife or anything like that, or no?
So Nietzsche's writings actually also coincided with like the rise of with Newton's like laws of physics and energy.
Yeah.
So which actually falls very closely in line with like Buddhist teaching, which is that we're all beings of energy, and we borrow energy from the earth. So that after we die, our energy just returns back to the earth. Like you, me, this table, everything around here, we're just borrowing energy. And the laws of physics would say that energy can't be created or destroyed. It just changes its form. So once we die, we just go back into the earth. Our energy gets redistributed back to the earth, and then then like the principles of reincarnation is that our energy gets recycled and we turn into something else. Not that our consciousness becomes something else, because we still have no idea what consciousness even is. But it's more so the energy that all like the cells and molecules that make up John, that make up Rex, just get, like parts of it become a flower, parts of it, and the flower gets eaten by a rabbit, the rabbit gets eaten by the wolf, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Man, it's a little bit depressing to think about. I think I'm too much of a hopeless romantic and optimist, maybe why I haven't bought into that. But no, I think that it is. I think you can rightly say it's arrogant of us to say, or it's like intolerant to say, hey, this is the only way, and if you believe differently, you're wrong. But I don't want to say it like that. I don't want to sound like that. I don't want to sound arrogant.
I mean, I could be wrong too.
Right. Yeah, we could all be wrong. But I think that it just goes back to conviction, what I believe, and ultimately, trusting for yourself. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I feel like I had a thought and I lost it in terms of why I believe what I believe. Like ultimately, it isn't. I don't want to come off as a judgmental, believe this or else, or kind of come off as an arrogant, person there. Ultimately, why I'm saying what I'm saying, why I'm doing what I'm doing is because, ultimately, like I want to love people and in humility, like suggest what I believe to be is the true path to love. And I guess that, ultimately it's going to end up, we can try to sugarcoat it all day. I can try to sugarcoat it because I like people to like me. Ultimately, like it is exclusive. Christianity and what Jesus taught. I think, it's, you can't say Jesus was a good teacher, because essentially at the end of the day, he said some things that like were black and white on if you're going to follow his teachings or not. So, yeah.
So can someone go to church, like, say someone attends your church week after week after week, can they do that and still not be a Christian?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think so. I know so. I mean, I would be, very welcoming, very inviting for anybody to come and especially, I think that we need to, and maybe church leaders of the past have not done this very well. We need to create safe spaces for people to come and be in our midst, regardless of what they believe, and if they have different thoughts than us. Like, for me, when I'm preparing my sermons or my talks, when I have spoken at church in the past, or when I will again in the future, I always try to think through, there's going to be, or at least I hope that there's going to be, several people there who are questioning faith, or skeptical about faith, or just not Christians, and I want to speak to them too, and I want to help answer some of their questions in there. But I know, man, my favorite author and my favorite pastor is a guy in New York City who basically, his name's Tim Keller, and he welcomed skeptics and people of other faiths and people of no faith into his church community. And one of the way that he was welcoming in that, and something I hope to do, is by talking to those people, expecting them to be there. Like, hey, we want you to invite people who are not Christians, and want people of other faiths. I think it's just good to even challenge ourselves sometimes, and you think differently about it. Like even now, talking to you, I think it's such a gift to me, because it's helping me think through how do I communicate what I believe to someone who maybe doesn't believe exactly like me. So yeah, I would say everybody's welcome for sure to join us, and when we get going, anybody be welcome for sure.
I mean, that's what Jesus did. Isn't like he brought in like the prostitutes, he brought in like the tax collectors. Like he said, he said he was indiscriminate with the people that he brought into his faith.
Yeah. And that's, that goes back to the whole, you can't earn it. You don't have to be this like religious, like perfect person in order to crack the doors of a church, which I think, a lot of times, and even you talk about the, decline of church and Christianity in America, some of that I think is our fault. Some of that is some churches and some pastors who are not welcoming to people who didn't believe like us, and ultimately drove a lot of even their own parishioners out. So
thank you for sharing everything so far.
Yeah.
Awesome discussion. I guess, all right, so the question that definitely hits a lot of people's minds: can someone be a scientist and a Christian at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I can't say from experience. I would say, pointing to several scientists who are Christians, I would have to say yes. Like, I think, I don't know the names offhand. I know, like, the guy who was the founder or director of the Human Genome Project. Oftentimes, that's one that is pointed to. He's a Christian and also studied genes and helped even develop a lot of what we believe about the human genes. I think his name is Francis Collins maybe, and he's like one of the greatest scientists in the world and is a Christian too. And I think even in the schools I was part of when I went to high school and college, I knew of other at least science professors who were Christians. I think you do like interpret the events of history and like you interpret science differently when you do have a Christian worldview for sure. But yeah, I would say yes. I know that's a big question a lot of people have though is can those two things coexist? I mean, I would hopefully say yes. One, because I think that a lot of people point to people way smarter than me. I wish I had all this information, but
you're a pretty smart guy so far.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people point to even the development of science and the development of math and things like that as coming out of like a Christian understanding of the world. Like I said, I don't have the smarts to defend that, but I've heard several people say things like that. I don't know if that just sounds like complete nonsense to you, but that's what I've heard. So
and because that was definitely a question I had a lot growing up when I was a kid. I'm like wait, like how because God created the earth in 6 days and He rested on the seventh, and I'm like, how is that even possible? Because a lot of what I was learning in church ran completely counter to like the teachings I got in school.
Yeah,
as far as like theory of evolution, and I was told by my pastor that the Earth is 5,000 years old, and then my science teacher comes around and was like, no, the Earth is 5 billion years old, and I'm like, which is it? And when you're 10 years old, you don't know what the heck to think. You're just absorbing information. And
you just got to make a choice. Yeah. You just got to go one way or the other. I think that's probably part of what I said about how some churches and some pastors have been so dogmatic about some of these issues that it's like. Like the 6-day creation. Who's to say? I would hold to more of a, they call it like the day age theory, where the day in Scripture, could have been a whole age. It wasn't one 24-hour day. Just because even like the people who, when Scripture was written, when Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 was written, it was thousands of years ago. Written by human authors, I believe inspired by God, but human authors who lived in a different time, lived in a different culture, and they weren't thinking scientifically like we think in our age. And when they said day, did it mean 24-hour period, or was it a metaphor to something more? And even I think that there's a lot that we can step back and say, ultimately, like the Bible is not and never does not, or does not, I don't think, claim to be a science book. I don't think that it claims to give the facts of creation necessarily, rather than kind of like the bigger question and the bigger meaning behind it. That's where I think science even helps us understand the Bible in a better light, and I think it just speaks to how we interpret things like that. So yeah. But that's a good example. I think that's one of them. There's other examples of science and the Bible having having what I would say are apparent contradictions that are not really contradictions. So
it just needs a lot of context.
Yeah. It takes a lot of context, and I think background study, and ultimately, like I said, humility to go, listen, the Bible's not trying to give you the facts of the world. The Bible's trying to give you like the meaning and the purpose behind it all.
And I think that's where a lot of people get lost, is that they look at the Bible like it's a factual book. When, I mean, this is the way I interpret the Bible, the way I view the Bible as well, because I've read most of it. It's a big book. But if you actually read the Bible, not as a factual book, but because the way I look at it is, it's what that Bible actually is. It's a library. It is the first
That's
thing
so true,
that was
Rex.
printed many, many times with a lot of different stories, a lot of different writing styles. Because if you read the book of Daniel and you read the book of Revelations, you're like, okay, these are very different styles of writing. You know. That should be the perspective that people, at least, my perspective, I'm not a theologian like you, that people should read the Bible from, instead of, hey, this is a scientific book. And I think that's the biggest mistake.
Yeah, man, that is so true. There's a book about how to read the Bible called How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth. And it just talks about how, the Bible, like you said, it is a library. It's 66 different books bound in one book, like written over 3,000 years, 2,000 years at least, written by 39, I think they say 39 different human authors. And so there's also, zooming back from that, it's written at different times, it's different genres, like you're saying. Genesis, and especially Genesis 1, is almost written like a poem. And then you have the Psalms and Proverbs, which are very poetic, and then you have the narratives of Jesus, you have apocalyptic literature. It's kind of, we have to help people understand, where they're at in the Bible. And I think reading the Bible, while I think everybody should have a Bible, I think that there is okay, let's sit down and talk about, like, this is in some ways a complicated book. Like, it's a little bit
tremendously complex.
Yeah, you want to understand like the context. Context is a key word in reading the Bible. So
awesome. Thank you for this conversation. So I guess final two. I'm going to take us into the final parts.
All right, cool.
All right, John.
So you're gonna ask you like, you're gonna ask me like my favorite color now. Give me a couple of easier questions, Rex, or what?
No, I'm gonna mentally beat you into submission till you become a Buddhist.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
No, that's totally not what I'm about. So, what's the impact you're looking to have on the world?
Yeah, man, I want it to be where the church that I plant and start in 10 years, 50 years or so, if the church closes up, the community, like around here, like the Channelside, the downtown Tampa community is gonna miss us. Because we were for our community, we were for the less fortunate, we were for people that were suffering, we were for the needy, and we made such a difference in the community that if we closed our doors, our community would be sad. That's one, I think, on a very practical, pragmatic level. That's the impact. Ultimately, I think that it's an eternal impact. I would hold to is I want to see people. I'll be unapologetic in this, Rex. Is I want to see people come to faith in Jesus Christ and come to, shoot an arrow through that imminent frame and go, man, and ask the bigger questions of life and go, man, is there more out there? And is there something to this, Jesus person who lived 2,000 years ago, and what did his life mean, and what did his death mean, and should I consider that? And ultimately, like I said, like, I don't want to shove it down anybody's throat. Like, I just want to bring people to that point and help people, like, ask the right questions. And then, that's all that I can do. People make their own decisions, make their own choices. And like I said, we both said, man, I could be wrong. Like, I do have a firm conviction about it, but ultimately I want to be a humble person too. So that's it. I think we want to have a difference here locally, and then hopefully have an eternal impact by waking people up to hey, there's something more out there, and I want to point people to that.
For sure. All right. And where can people find out more about you and your church?
Yeah. Well, here's the tricky thing, Rex. Is if you're publishing this anytime soon, there's nowhere you can come to church yet. It'll be a few months or so. Right now, we're recording this in March, and we don't have any public gatherings yet. But eventually, we will have. Christians have always worshipped on Sunday mornings, oftentimes, and we may have a Sunday morning or maybe another time during the week. But the best place to kind of keep up with us and to follow along, we have a website, churchatchannelside.com. That's just what we called it because I'm really not creative at all, Rex. All right, so we want to be a church, and we love this area, the Channelside area, and so we are the Church at Channelside. So our website, www.churchatchannelside, and then also we have Instagram and Facebook, just Church at Channelside as well. And on there you can get updates as to what's going on. When we start doing some public events, like I said, all are welcome. We want to invite a lot of our neighbors and a lot of people into hearing what we're doing and go from there. So
awesome. And I'm just gonna selfishly sneak one last question in here.
Yeah.
What are some things that you've already done for like the Channelside community, or what are some projects you're working on?
Yeah, we've tried to adopt the two like public or the two schools in the Channelside area. So there's Rampello Downtown Partnership School, which is just like a stone's throw away, and that's a public school, and then Channelside Academy. And just a few times so far, we brought coffee and donuts, and then coffee and donuts to the faculty of the school. One time at Rampello Elementary, the kids weren't drinking enough water during the day because the water fountains were shut down because of COVID, and the kids needed water bottles. And so we just got a collection from our congregants and people who want to be a part of this church, and went to Walmart and bought a bunch of water bottles and gave them out to some kids at Rampello. We've gone to a couple community events to serve in the community. Just even beautification. We help put up a Christmas tree and take down a Christmas tree and help serve in the community. Eventually, man, I would love to get involved with. Homelessness is a problem throughout Tampa Bay, specifically downtown Tampa, and it'll take us another podcast to talk through like what does it look like to what is helping someone who's a houseless individual. How do we help that person? But that's one of the things we want to tackle is helping that community and just other communities in need. I think even looking around, Tampa ranks really high on sex trafficking, and man, how do we serve that community and help make a difference and move the needle there? And so those are ways that we've been thinking through, how to serve. But if you know of any ways, listen, we want to get involved and make our community better. So,
wow, I'm definitely gonna have to bring you on for a part 2.
All right, dude, I love it. This has been so good, man.
Thank you as well. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Cheers with our water.
Cheers, our water.
All right, man.
Is this holy water? Yours might be.
No, we don't do that. Protestant, we don't do that. All right,
man. Thank you so much.
Dude, this has been so fun, man.